What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Week 11 edition of the Fantasy Football Guy podcast. I'm your host, Guy Vataco, presented by NSTV. Thank you again, NSTV, for allowing me to use this beautiful studio. Here we are heading into Week 11 of the NFL season. It's insane. I say it every week, but it really is. Week number 11 is a massive week for fantasy playoff implications. This is a must-win week for all fantasy owners, especially those who are in the 5-5, 4-6 range, even 6-4 range. This is a massive week. This is a must-win week. So it is important that you make the best decisions to help you get a fantasy victory this week. So before I look ahead to week number 11. Let's just recap really quick. Week number 10, a week in which our leading scorer at running back was Derrick Henry, who put up 33.1 points. If you have Derrick Henry and you've held on to him, good for you. I didn't think he'd be that good with Tannehill behind center, but I was wrong. Henry is currently on a bye. But if you have Derrick Henry, you made a great pick. I wasn't a fan of Henry going into the season. Wide receivers, the two leading scorers from last week, let's talk about first. 37.8 points from Cardinals wide receiver Christian Kirk. Kirk is now 29th in point rankings after that huge week last week against the Buccaneers. This week he's at San Francisco. I'm not putting Kirk in the must-start category yet, but he is heading in that direction. He's getting hot at the right time, especially for fantasy playoffs, as the fantasy playoffs roll around. If you have Christian Kirk, I have him as a top 20 play this week, but I don't know if he is a top 20 play going forward as there are teams with buys. But keep an eye on Christian Kirk. If you have him, good for you. I would play him this week. I know San Fran's a good defense, but Christian Kirk's been good. And they played recently, and I'll tell you right now, Christian Kirk had 3.6 points, which is not good. So I still would play him. If you have him, he's a top 20 play for me. And then to Giants wide receiver Darius Slayton, who put up 34.1 points. He's been very good. Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram have been out. Darius Slayton, I wouldn't say is stepped up because he had a 1-catch, 6-reception game just 2 weeks ago, I guess, against the Cowboys. But he put up 19 against Detroit and now 34 against the Jets. We'll see what Sterling Shepard's status is, but as of now, I would say do not rush on the Darius Slayton bandwagon. Do not. I don't think he is worth wow. Excuse me, let me reset. Using a waiver wire acquisition on Darius Slayton, especially if you're in the top 3, don't go for Slayton. I just don't think he's going to be that great, especially if Ingram and Sterling Shepard return. And before I get into week number 11, let me just talk about the Falcons running back situation. Devontae Freeman, it looks like, will miss a couple of weeks. If you are a Freeman owner, I hope you had an early waiver wire pick up Brian Hill. He's a must-add in all fantasy formats. He's now the starting running back for the Falcons, who are a high-powered offense, even though their record isn't that great. I think Brian Hill is a must-add in all leagues. Hopefully you already added him as the waiver wire happened earlier this morning. He is a must-add. He's a must-play. I'm going to put him not quite in the top 20 range yet, but he could totally be in that range for the next 2 weeks, 2 crucial weeks, as I mentioned earlier. All right, everybody, before we start talking about Week 11, let's talk about the teams on buys. First, 8-2 Seattle Seahawks, who had a huge win against the Niners on Monday night in that great game. Next, 8-2 Green Bay Packers, who have been rolling. The 5-5 Tennessee Titans, as we spoke earlier about Derrick Henry. And the 2-8 New York Giants, as we spoke earlier about Darius Slayton. Now, let's look ahead to week number 11 of this fantasy football season. Yeah, week 11. I can't believe it. First up, Thursday night football between the 5-4 Pittsburgh Steelers and the 3-5 Cleveland Browns, a divisional matchup featuring 2 quarterbacks who should not be played in any format. Baker Mayfield, a major fantasy disappointment this year. Mason Rudolph, no one ever thought to draft him because we all thought Big Ben would be the quarterback, but even with Big Ben down, Mason Rudolph's not worth playing, so I would not play either quarterback in this game. They're not even rated inside my top 20. To the running back situation, this is an interesting one. Cleveland Browns, Nick Chubb had 20-plus carries last week, but Kareem Hunt is back, and Kareem Hunt is getting touches. That doesn't make Nick Chubb not a top 10 play. I have him number 7. I know the Steelers' defense has been good, but Chubb will get his carries. He will get his receptions. Start Nick Chubb. As for Kareem Hunt, I have Kareem Hunt ranked, let me see, number 30. I don't think you should be confident starting Kareem Hunt. If you are a Kareem Hunt owner, you need to pay very close attention to this game tomorrow night to see what his role is. It will be live on Fox, I believe. Watch what happens with Kareem Hunt, but I think if you're a Chubb owner, you must have Kareem Hunt. You must own Kareem Hunt, and if you're not a Chubb owner, you still should pick up Kareem Hunt because he got a lot of work last week, so pick up Kareem Hunt. To the Steelers side, I think James Conner is going to play, and I think he's going to play a lot. I have him inside my top 10, number 8. So the best 2 options in this game at running back, Nick Chubb and James Conner. To the wide receivers in this matchup, we expected Juju Smith-Schuster to be great. We expected Odell Beckham Jr. to be great. We expected Jarvis Landry to be viable, and none of the 3 are viable. Odell Beckham Jr., it's too hard to bench him. He's inside my top 15. I have him 14. You got to play Odell Beckham Jr., but you do not have to play Juju Smith-Schuster nor Jarvis Landry, both outside my top 20. I have Juju at 23 and Jarvis at 29. With the bye weeks, they're not the worst options, but they're also not the best options. So, if I have a decision to make between Juju Smith-Schuster and Stephon Diggs, I currently have Stephon Diggs in, and I have Diggs rated higher. So, if you have a decision like that, it depends who it is between. I would say play Juju Smith-Schuster over the likes of Mohamed Sanu, Curtis Samuel, Robert Woods, Alshon Jeffrey, even Jarvis Landry. In Landry's case, I would play him over Michael Gallup, Calvin Ridley, Jamison Crowder, Terry McLaurin, but they're not the best plays, either of those 2. Tight ends in this game, not playing any tight end. And I do like the Pittsburgh Steelers defense very much so, not just this week, but going forward. They have a very light schedule all the way through the fantasy championship, which is usually week 16. So if you can get your hands on the Steelers defense, I would, and I would be confident starting them tomorrow against the Browns. Baker will make mistakes, and they'll force turnovers. Next up, we have the 6-3 Houston Texans traveling to the 7-2 Baltimore Ravens. A great matchup in week number 11. Both quarterbacks inside my top 3. Lamar Jackson, number 2. Deshaun Watson, number 3. We were wondering who was going to be the Patrick Mahomes of this year for fantasy purposes at quarterback, and that man is Lamar Jackson. Start Lamar Jackson. Start Deshaun Watson. They should get good points for you. To the running backs, Mark Ingram, number 9 for me. Both Texans running backs, not great options. I have Hyde 25th, and I have Duke Johnson 40. They're just not reliable options week to week. I wouldn't play either of them. Hyde is the better play, but not the greatest of plays. To the wide receivers, you're playing, obviously, DeAndre Hopkins, and that's really it in this game in the wide receivers. Marquise Brown, to me, is the second best option. But a guy to look at is Will Fuller, the 5th, who is supposedly returning this week. If he's a boomer bust guy. I'm never a fan of guys like that, but he can have 30 or he can have 5. So pay attention to Will Fuller's role as he returns to the team this week. The tight ends, Mark Andrews is the top 3 play for me. He caught 2 touchdowns last week against the Bengals. I don't expect that this week against the Texans, but I do expect a good game. So play Mark Andrews. I'm not confident starting any Texans tight ends. That is a great game, and I am very excited for that. A huge AFC matchup. Next game, 1 o'clock kickoff, another divisional matchup between the 2-7 Atlanta Falcons and the 5-4 Carolina Panthers. I think people are sleeping on this game. I think it's going to be better than many expect. Matt Ryan, a top 5 play for me this week. Play Matt Ryan. Kyle Allen, also a very good option. I have him ranked 13. That's the highest I've ever had Kyle Allen. The Falcons defense, I know they played great last week against the Saints, but I think that's a fluke. If you have Kyle Allen, I would play him over the likes of Carson Wentz, Jimmy Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins. As a daily fantasy player myself, Kyle Allen's probably not too expensive. I think he'll be a good play. To the running backs in this matchup, as I mentioned earlier, Brian Hill, must add in all leagues. I have him 20th. The Panthers' run D has not been that great. I expect Hill to have a pretty good game, and there's not much to say about Christian McCaffrey except play Christian McCaffrey. To the wide receivers in this matchup, excuse me, best option is Julio Jones, who was not so great last week. I have Julio number 2. I expect a big week from him this week against the Panthers. Play Julio Jones. Next best option in this game is DJ Moore, who I have 16th. I think he's going to have a good game. Like I said, the Panthers' defense isn't good. So play DJ Moore, play Julio Jones. The next best option for me is Curtis Samuel, who I have 25th. That's one of the highest I've had him all season. Like I said, it's a good matchup against the Falcons. Calvin Ridley, outside my top 30 at 31. He's just too boomer bust, and I'm expecting a bust this week. Tight ends, it's sad to say Austin Hooper is out at least, I heard, a month with an MCL injury. So if you have Austin Hooper, put him on your bench. Don't drop him, though, because he can be back in crucial parts of the playoffs. So watch his status. But for this week, you're obviously not playing him. The best option in this game is Greg Olsen, who I have ranked number 7. I wouldn't be confident starting either defense. I expect pretty high-scoring game. Next game, we have the 5-4 Dallas Cowboys traveling to Detroit to take on the 3-5-1 Detroit Lions. A huge week for the Cowboys, coming off a huge loss to the Minnesota Vikings, and a huge week for the Lions, who come off a loss when Matthew Stafford was out with a back injury. We have to check Stafford's status going forward, but I'm gonna say he plays. I have him inside my top 10, number 8. This guy wants to play. He wants to be on the field. It's hard to get him off, as we saw his incredible game streak end. I think he's going to play. So I actually like him a lot against the Cowboys. Number 8, Stafford. And number 6 for me is Dak Prescott. I like both of these guys. I think it's a high-scoring game. It usually is, I feel like, Cowboys-Lions. I think it'll be a good one. So start both quarterbacks. I think they're good options. Running backs, Ezekiel Elliott had 20 carries for a little over 40 yards last week, which isn't great, but you got to play Zeke, and he's a top 5 running back. Have him 5th this week. On the other side, the Lions running back situation is in scrambles. Ty Johnson left with a concussion. J.D. McKissick's not reliable. I'm not playing any Lions running back. If I'm picking one, it's McKissick, who I have ranked 34. I'm not confident starting any Lions running back this week or any week going forward. But, well, I don't want to say going forward. We'll see what happens. But this week I wouldn't be confident with either guy. To the wide receivers, best options in this game are Amari Cooper and Kenny Galladay. Cooper, for me, is 6th. Galladay, 9. Play both of those guys. The next best option for me is Marvin Jones Jr., who I have 17th, another boomer bust guy. But if Matthew Stafford plays, I'm expecting a boom. Play Marvin Jones this week. Michael Gallup, to me, is a top 30, play number 30. So not the greatest of plays, but not the worst either. Tight ends in this game. Not confident starting any tight end in this game. Not confident starting either defense in this game. Like I said, I expect a high-scoring game. That should be another good game. So far we have 3 great games for Sunday. Next game, another divisional matchup between the 4-5 Jacksonville Jaguars, led by the returning Nick Foles, and the 5-4 Indianapolis Colts, led by hopefully returning Jacoby Brissett. This is another great matchup I am excited for. And the quarterbacks in this game wouldn't confidently start either. I have Brissett 18 and Foles 20. Not the greatest of plays. There's much better options out there. To the running backs in this game, Leonard Fournette for me is a top 5 play, number 4. He gets too many touches. He gets too much receptions to not play every week. Play Leonard Fournette. Then the next best option is Marlon Mack, who I have 18th, which is a little lower than he usually is. That Jags run D isn't too bad, especially if Brissett's out. I think his value drops even more so, but Marlon Mack is a must-start in all leagues, in my opinion. To the wide receivers in this game, excuse me. So the Jags wide receiver situation is interesting. DJ Chark Jr. is a top 11 play for me, but a guy to look at is D.D. Westbrook, who had a great chemistry with Nick Foles in the preseason and even in week 1 before Foles went down. D.D. Westbrook, to me, is a guy you should add and stash on your bench. Foles and Westbrook had that great connection. I wouldn't play Westbrook this week, but he's a guy to pick up and stash on your bench. He could have great value going forward, especially with Foles in the lineup. So that's something to look at. But for this week, DJ Chark is the best play. I have him number 11th. On the Colts side, I'm not confident starting any Colts receiver. The best option for me is Zach Pascal at 28th. Not a confident start guy, not a must-start guy for me. But if you are desperate, I wouldn't say desperate, but I have him ranked above Jarvis Landry, Michael Gallup, Calvin Ridley, Jamison Crowder. Not the greatest of plays, especially against the Jaguars. Tight ends, the two Colts tight ends aren't reliable enough for me to start, so don't start either of them. I wouldn't start either defense in this game either. It's going to be an interesting game. Next up, another divisional matchup between the 6-3 Buffalo Bills traveling to the 2-7 Miami Dolphins, a game that many may expect to stink, but I expect it to be a good one. The Dolphins have been pretty good recently, but that doesn't stop the fact that you must start Josh Allen. Number 4 for me, start Josh Allen. He's been a reliable fantasy quarterback this year, and I expect a great game against the Dolphins. Not confidently starting Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's not inside my top 20. He's so inconsistent. I'm going to say he has a bad game. Don't start Ryan Fitzpatrick. To the running backs in this matchup, the best option for me is inside my top 15 at 14. Bills running back Devin Singletary. He did not perform as well as I expected he would last week, but I'm expecting a better game this week against the Dolphins. Play Devin Singletary with confidence, and don't play any Dolphins running back with confidence. Kalen Ballage is the best option, and he's not even inside my top 40, so stay away from him. Wide receivers, the best option in this game has been Mr. Consistent John Brown. He's been really reliable, and I expect that to continue this week. Maybe even a better game than that. I'm expecting at least 18 points from John Brown. Play John Brown, top 15 play for me. Don't play any Dolphins receivers. Don't play any tight ends in this game, and play the Buffalo Bills defense, number 5. I know I said this is going to be a better game than people expect, but that doesn't mean that the Bills won't force turnovers. Next game, we have the 3-6 Denver Broncos traveling to the 7-3 Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins outside my top 15 at 16. I wouldn't confidently start him this week. Would not play Brandon Allen. To the running backs, play Dalvin Cook. Phillip Lindsay is the best option out of that Broncos backfield. I have him 21st. I think his value is definitely degraded with the new quarterback, but he's too talented of a player to bench. So play Phillip Lindsay. Next up, Royce Freeman, 32 for me, not the best option. Wide receivers in this matchup, we'll take a look at Adam Thielen's status. I don't have him ranked as of now, so that makes Stephon Diggs the best option in this game, in my opinion, number 13. I know he's had 2 lousy weeks, but I expect a boom in this week from Diggs, who is another boomer bust guy. Didn't expect that this year, but I'm going to say Stephon Diggs booms this week. The next best option in this game is Courtland Sutton, number 21. He's the number 1 option out there now in Denver with Emmanuel Sanders gone. Not the worst option, not the best option. 21. I play Courtland Sutton. Tight ends, not playing either tight end in this game, but take a look at Noah Fant. He had a pretty good connection with Brandon Allen in Allen's first start, so Fant is someone to keep an eye on, but not confidently play. And to me, the Minnesota Vikings are the number 1 defense this week at home versus Denver. Play the Vikings defense. Next game, we have the 7-2 New Orleans Saints traveling to the 3-6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another divisional matchup. Another game that should be high scoring. The Saints are coming off a heartbreaking loss at home versus the Atlanta Falcons. Drew Brees, inside my top 10, number 9. Play Drew Brees. He should have a good game against the Buccaneers. Jameis, on the other hand, is outside my top 10 at 11. Not the worst option, but not the best either. At home versus Saints, we all know Jameis will throw a lot of yards. He'll probably throw at least 2 touchdowns, but he will probably throw a couple picks, may fumble too. So that's why he's 11. If the picks and fumbles weren't in there, he'd probably be a top 5 play. To the running backs, Alvin Kamara inside my top 3. Number 2, I like Alvin Kamara a lot this week. He has great success against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have been pretty good against the run, but that doesn't mean they'll stop Kamara's pass-catching ability, so play Alvin Kamara. Next best option is Ronald Jones, the second, number 23 for me. He's been very good recently. I would be confident starting Ronald Jones this week. And then Latavius Murray has dropped since Kamara's returned. He's 35th for me. To the wide receivers, the number one fantasy wide receiver so far this year and the number one fantasy wide receiver for me this week, Michael Thomas. Play Michael Thomas and play both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, who I have ranked 7th and 8th overall at wide receiver. Tight end's not confident in anyone, but the best option is Jared Cook. Have him ranked 8th in the thin tight end position. In the thin tight end position. Could be a decent play. On the other side, O.J. Howard caught a touchdown, but that was against the Arizona Cardinals, who don't know that other teams have tight ends. Let me give myself a laughter for that one. I'm funny, I know. So do not play O.J. Howard. And the defense category, the Saints are the best, are a decent option. I have them ranked 8th. Not the best, not the worst. If you have a defense on a bye, maybe you pick them up this week. Next game, we have the 2-7 New York Jets taking on the 1-8 Washington Redskins, now led by Dwayne Haskins. Do not play either quarterback in this game. Play Le'Veon Bell just because of the amount of work he'll get. I have him ranked 10th, but he's been a huge disappointment. He's not been the your first-round pick worthy running back so far this year, and I don't expect him to be. Maybe this week he has a pretty good game, but then to the Redskins side, we now have Darius Geis returning. We have Chris Thompson maybe returning, and Adrian Peterson. This is a 3-man backfield that I am avoiding at all cost. Maybe pick up Geis as a stash on your bench, but not a confident start for me this week, even against the Jets. To the wide receivers, the best option for me this week is Jamison Crowder. In this matchup, I have him 32, then Terry McLaurin at 33. Not confidently starting either guy, but if you need a boom or bust type of guy, McLaurin is that for me. If you want consistency, I'd go Crowder. Not playing either tight ends in this game, and I love both defenses. Both defenses are good plays for me. I expect a lot of a lot of mistakes made in this game. Now to the 4 o'clock games. The first one, 4:05, a divisional matchup between the 3-6-1 Arizona Cardinals and the 8-1 San Francisco 49ers, who are coming off a heartbreaking loss. Kyler Murray, have him ranked 10th. He had a very good game, surprisingly, on that Thursday night game against the Niners. Wouldn't confidently start him, but he's not a must start, but he's a guy you could play, let's say, over a guy like Jameis Winston, Tom Brady, Kyle Allen, Carson Wentz. I'd play Murray over those guys. Jimmy Garoppolo, have him 15th. I'm just not confident starting him, especially if Sanders and Kittle are out. His options are limited. To the running back position, the best option for me is Tevin Coleman, who I have ranked 11th, and then Matt Breida, who I have ranked 25th. Next best, to the Cardinals running back situation, David Johnson and Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds and whoever else. It's so complicated. David Johnson barely played. Kenyon, I don't know. The best, if I'm picking one, it's David Johnson, but he's dropped so far in my rankings. He's 28th. Then I have Kenyon Drake, 29. I wouldn't confidently start either guy, especially in this tough matchup against the Niners. Wide receivers, spoke earlier about Christian Kirk. He's the best option for me in this game. I have him 19th. With so many injuries to wide receivers and buys, I think he's a must-start this week. I wouldn't start any Niners receiver. The best option would be Deebo Samuel. Well, no, the best option would be Emmanuel Sanders, but I don't know if he plays this week. So if he's out, Deebo Samuel is the best option, but I wouldn't confidently start him. I have him 40th. And then I have Larry Fitzgerald, 38. I'm just not confident starting him. Tight ends, if George Kittle plays, he's an absolute must-play, but I don't know if he does. Keep an eye on that. Not playing the Cardinals tight end. And I like the Niners defense. They should force some turnovers with Kyler Murray. If you have the Niners defense, not an awful play this week. Next to the 4:25 game is the first one. We have the 0-9 Cincinnati Bengals against the 5-4 Oakland Raiders. 0-9 Bengals don't play the quarterback. A good option for daily fantasy this week could be Derek Carr, who should have a pretty good game at home against the Bengals, whose defense is just not that good. Running backs in this game, best option, Josh Jacobs. He's inside my top 10, number 6 this week. He should have a great game against the Bengals. Joe Mixon, surprisingly, was not too bad last week. So if you have Joe Mixon, he's inside my top 20 at 17. Play Joe Mixon. He got a lot of touches, and he did pretty well. Giovanni Bernard is not probably not going to be playing with an injury, so play Joe Mixon. Wide receivers in this matchup. The best option for me is Tyler Boyd, number 20. I don't think A.J. Green plays this week or any week the rest of the season. This team is out. He wants a new contract, and I don't think he needs to play to prove that he deserves one. So I'm going to say that A.J. Green does not play this week. Don't hold me to this year. Don't hold me to that. He could, but I highly doubt it. So Boyd is the best option for me in this game. Second best is Tyrell Williams, who I have 22nd. He should have a good bounce-back game against the Bengals. Tight end's not playing any tight end on the Bengals, but you should play Darren Waller, who has been disappointing the last couple weeks. I expect a bounce-back game for Waller. Have him fourth. I expect big things. Defense, Raiders, number 2 for me this week. They should force turnovers. They should be a good play, so play the Raiders defense. Next 425 game, to me, the game of the week, the rematch of the Super Bowl. From 2 years ago, the 8-1 New England Patriots returning from a bye against the 5-4 Philadelphia Eagles. Cannot wait for this game, but I'm not confident starting either quarterback. Tom Brady 12, Carson Wentz 14. Don't confidently start either guy. Running backs, best option in this game is James White, who I have 16. I expect the James White type of game coming off a loss off the bye. I expect James White to have a pretty good game. Next best option is number 24, Sony Michel. He just takes a hit with Rex Burkhead in the lineup. He doesn't get as many touches as you would want him to. So 24, not the greatest option, not the worst option. Then both Eagles running backs take a hit for me. I have Howard and Sanders, 26 and 27 respectively. It's a tough matchup against a great defense, so not confident starting either of those two. And then Rex Burkhead's 36. Wouldn't confidently play him, but if you're a Michel or White owner, he may be a good handcuff. To the wide receivers in this matchup, best option inside the top 5 for me this week, Mr. Julian Edelman. Stud. He's a great fantasy option. Play Julian Edelman. Next best option for me is actually not on the Eagle side, it's on the Patriots side again, Mr. Mohamed Sanu. Play Mohamed Sanu inside my top 25, number 24. I think he has a good game and a good rest of the season going forward. Best Eagles wide receiver option is Alshon Jeffrey, having 27th. Not a must start, but not a must bench either. He'll be shadowed by one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, Stephon Gilmore, which is why he's not inside my top 25, which is why he's at 27. Tight ends, play Zach Ertz, number 5. He's just too good of a tight end in a thin position to bench. Play Zach Ertz. I think he has a pretty good game, even against the Patriots. And now to the Patriots defense. A question, I have them number 7. I think they'll force turnovers with Carson Wentz. They'll get sacks. They're coming off of a bye. They're typically great when they come off of a bye, and they're coming off a loss before the bye week. So I would play the Patriots. The only defenses I play over them are the Steelers, who play the Browns, the Bills, who play the Dolphins, the Rams, who play the Bears, the Niners, who play the Cardinals, the Raiders, who play the Bengals, and the Vikings, who play the Broncos. So they're a top 10 play for me this week. Next to the Sunday night football game, we have the 4-5 Chicago Bears and the 5-4 Los Angeles Rams, a game that we all expected to be higher stakes than it is going to be. Both these teams have taken a huge step back this year compared to last year. And I expect a low-scoring game, to be honest, a pretty boring one at that. Not confident starting either quarterback. I know Goff's home and he's better home, but the Bears' defense needs to step up in order for them to win. Goff is 19th for me. To the running backs in this game, the best option is Todd Gurley, who's 15th for me. I just don't know what's going on. He must be hurt, or I don't know. Clearly, he's not the same player he was last year, but he's not a guy you should bench either. I think he is a guy you have to play. He's 15th for me. David Montgomery, 19th. That whole Bears offense is just not good, but Montgomery gets touches, so he's inside the top 20 for me. Next up, at the wide receiver position, what happened to Cooper Kupp last week? He didn't have a reception. I can't even explain it, but you can't bench Cooper Kupp. He's 12th for me. I'm not going to say a bounce-back week, but at least a reception this week. Let me laugh at that one. He should have some catches. He should do something in this game. Next best option, Allen Robinson, 18th. He's so talented, but his team stinks, and it's sad, but play Allen Robinson. And then Robert Woods, 26, really dropping off from last year, but I don't think it has anything to do with him. It has everything to do with Jared Goff. Not the best option, not the worst option either. Tight ends, no tight end is worth playing on the Bears side. Gerald Everett inside my top 10 and number 9 just because of how thin the position is. And then the defenses, both should be decent plays in a game that should be low scoring, but not the greatest of options. On the Bears side, because they have to travel to LA, the Rams inside my top 5, they're number 4 for me as a defensive play this week. And to the last game of the week, a huge divisional matchup that we expected to also mean more than it's going to. The 6-4 Kansas City Chiefs play the Los Angeles Chargers in Mexico City, Monday Night Football. Number 1 quarterback for me this week is Patrick Mahomes, and number 7 quarterback for me is Phillip Rivers. I like both of these guys. They're both good plays in a game that should be very high scoring. To the running backs, best option is number 12 and 13, both on the Chargers, Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler. They should have good games in a high-scoring game. Then the Chiefs running back situation is just crazy. LaShawn McCoy was a healthy scratch last week. I don't know if he did something or what. But keep an eye on what happens with that. But if he's out, Damian Williams is a good play. Even if he plays, Damian Williams is the best option for me. I have him 22nd. He would be up more if I knew what was going to happen, but I don't. So pay attention to that. See what's good. But if McCoy's out again, Williams is a pretty good play, in my opinion. To the wide receivers, best option in this game is Tyreek Hill. I have number 3. He's been a stud since he's returned with Matt Moore, and now with Mahomes back, play Tyreek Hill. Keenan Allen, number 10 for me. After an amazing start, he just somewhat dipped off. But I'm going to say Keenan Allen has a great game. I'm going to say he has at least 20 points this week against the Chiefs. Play Keenan Allen, and this is also a must-win week for the Chargers. Wouldn't be confident starting any other receiver in this game. My next best option is Sammy Watkins, 35th, Mecole Hardman, 36, who is a fast man, and then Mike Williams, 39. Wouldn't be confident in any of those players, but they're not the worst options in a game, like I said, should be high scoring. Tight end, both tight ends are great plays. Number 1, Travis Kelce for me, and number 6, Hunter Henry. Both of these guys should be started in all leagues. Wouldn't play either defense either. All right, everybody, that wraps up the Week 11 edition of the Fantasy Football Guy podcast. I appreciate you listening. I'll be back next week to discuss what happened in week number 11 and look forward to week number 12. Best of luck to everybody.